Welcome to Becoming Church, the podcast where we discuss how the message and movement of Jesus is not just about becoming Christians, but about becoming the church. I'm your host, Kristen Mockler-Young, and my guest today is Peter Mutabazi, but you might know him as the foster dad flipper. In the span of about a decade, Peter has welcomed over 40 children into his home and learned a lot of lessons along the way. In his first book, Now I Am Known, Peter tells his story of living on the streets of Kampala, Uganda, and how God used what he experienced there to truly transform his life. In his second book, Love Does Not Conquer All, he shares the surprising lessons he's learned as a foster parent. Peter's here today to talk about all of it and to help us understand how we as a church can support the people who find themselves in a system that they never asked to be a part of. Peter, welcome to the Becoming Church podcast.
Well, thank you for having me here. Truly a joy to be with you.
I'm so glad to have you. I know we were texting over the summer. It's hard being a working mom and a working dad trying to coordinate schedules.
Yes, with 6 kids, yes, it's impossible to just run through the day.
Yeah, I can imagine. And we're definitely going to get into how you do all of the things that you do. But I want our listeners to get to know you a little bit. So I thought we would do a fun little Q&A just to kind of get started. You, besides having fostered over 40 kids, which is incredible, you've also become kind of a social media dad celebrity. So if our listeners were required to watch one of your reels or one of your videos, which one would you pick?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's so many. I think maybe my kids trying my first food for the very, very first time. They're like, I don't know if I'm going to survive here.
Yeah. Do your kids like making content with you?
Always, yes. They come up with ideas, and they're the ones who come, kind of do it. So, which is always a joy.
I love that. I wondered how much input they had, or if they were just like, here we go again, Dad.
No, they say them, they go watch things. They're like, Dad, we should do this. I'm like, okay, put it on the list. And usually that's how we do it. Yes.
And it's something bonding. It's something fun that you guys can do together.
Right, absolutely. And my kids don't have social media, so I think they see themselves in our social media. It's what they enjoy because they, I don't know, they just enjoy being part of the family social media more than they do it on their own, which is fun.
Yeah. You're providing family for them and introducing them to your village, as you always talk to us about.
Right. And also my kids, the people that follow us have grown up with them, so Anthony was 11, he's 19 now. So it's like, that's what he knows, that, the same comments, same people. So in some way, I think they feel this is like part of our house, part of our village in a way. Yeah.
Do you ever have a battle with them about, making content for social media, but them not having social media?
No,
Oh, that's good.
No, they, no, not really. Maybe sometimes they're like, today I'm not feeling it, so I'm not doing it. I'm like, okay, maybe tomorrow.
Done. Yeah. But do they ever wish they had their own accounts? Is there that conflict of like, we get to make it, but we don't have it?
They have them.
Oh, they do. Okay.
My two adults, they have them, but they just enjoy, again, I don't know, they enjoy our people, that's kind of what they find joy, I think. Yes.
That's good. Well, what is something surprising that people might be like, oh, well, I didn't expect that about being, a dad influencer on social media?
I think, foster is most time, there's just so much negative about foster care, so when they get really see the joy, the fun that have my kids are like, your kids are normal? Like, yes, they are normal in a way, I think sometimes people are shocked that they're normal kids because I think they've had so much stories about, the bad about foster care. They usually don't associate with positive in a way. Yeah. So seeing my kids being, having fun and doing things, they're like, wow, what they can be. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Healthy, loved children that are thriving in life for sure. Yes. You've met them. You know how they can. I have. We still have, listen, the last time we were together at Claudia's, I think, baby shower, my daughters and your kids were taking photos of we still have those in their bedrooms. So your kids' faces are still living in my kids' bedrooms, which is so fun. There you go. Yes. Yeah. Well, with all those kids, what's the weirdest thing that you found in your couch cushions? Oh, Oh gosh, like half apple that has been eaten and has been there for a week, not just
Oh,
been there for a week, and half open bite apple.
yep. All the gross stuff about having children, right? Okay, well, Claudia, I know Claudia worked with you for a while, and so she did give me a little behind the scenes. She said, ask Peter if he ever gets weird or surprising DMs from women.
I get those every day, I think. Every day.
Really?
About 50 a day. That's being honest.
And they're trying to like come in and be your wife, be the mom to these kids?
Correct. Yes. They're like, I can come and babysit, or I can come and just be a mom. I can come and cook. Whatever you need, I'll be there.
What do you even respond?
Yes. I mean, they're your village. Usually you respond, I say, I wish I could. And sometimes they're in Brazil, they're in Uganda, they're in Kenya, they're in the Philippines. I'm like, if I could, yes, I would bring you over so you can help.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, you did mention, busy schedule, and you do a lot of things. I imagine with all of the different kids, you've got therapies and court appointments and making videos and media requests and all of these things. How do you actually manage doing all of this as a single dad?
So for me, I allocated days. So there are days that I don't do things, and days I do things. So weekends, I cannot do anything because I have my kids 24/7.
Yeah.
During school time, it's a little bit easier because they go to school, from 8:30 until at least 3 p.m. So in that, I can do so much. I'm doing a podcast with you.
Yep.
If CNN or who knows wants to talk to me, I can. And sometimes there are some who are willing to talk to me or work with me once the kids go to bed. And usually I like that, so the kids in bed, I've done all that I need to do. And now I have 2 hours that I can spare to do something with someone. And that's how I manage. But my kids come first in a way.
That's great.
Yeah. We also don't create content every day. We create content maybe once every 10 to 15 days. So we create enough to carry us through the entire week.
That's smart.
Yes.
Yeah, that's smart. Do you also enlist, do you have, I know I've seen you cooking, I've seen you doing these things. Are there other people that come along and help, or do you really bring the kids in to kind of help take care of things around the house as well?
The kids, again, our kids, I want to equip them. I don't want to empower them, by one day if they go to live on their own, that they know how to make a meal. They know how to clean. So we always do it as a family. My kids, when it comes to the kitchen, they love to participate. They love to come up with ideas. Anthony this weekend cooked, what did he cook? Chicken Alfredo. So we had to go buy it and then he's the one to look up for all the recipes and then come and prepare it. And it's always a joy to see them just really excited that they made a meal and their siblings are loving it in a way. Yes.
That's great. Yeah. Well, Peter, why don't I want to get to your book and all of the things that you're doing, but will you tell our listeners a little bit about your own childhood and growing up?
Yes, absolutely. As you can tell, my accent is from Charlotte, North Carolina. I usually tell people when you come to North Carolina, this is how we speak. They're like,
everyone sounds.
Exactly. It's a Queen City. Come on. Well, I'm from Uganda. I grew up in a small little village where life was really miserable. Grew up in a place where I had to go fetch water 3 to 4 miles away twice a day. Grew up in a home where I had to help my mom to grow food because we can only eat what we grew. We couldn't afford to buy food outside. Grew up in a home where no one told you to dream. Think about at the age of 3, you go fetch water. At the age of 4 and 5, you can make a meal for your siblings. You babysit and help mom in the kitchen. That there's no time to be a child. There is no time to see the glimpse of hope in so many ways. So that was my life. Think about this way. If a mom cannot feed you, how do they tell you to dream?
Yeah.
And that was my mom. And that's all we knew, misery. And it wasn't just us, but everyone around you. That was their lifestyle. So there wasn't a place to see a glimpse of hope. It wasn't there at all. At the age of 4, I realized that not only was I poor, but my father was also abusive in every way, shape, form you can imagine. And not just to me, but to my mom as well. So as a kid, I think The hardest job or the hardest abuse was watching your mom, who loves you so much, being abused, but you cannot protect her in a way. So for me, I didn't have hope outside. Neither did I have hope inside our home. So for me, hoping was lying to yourself. To be hopeful that's a lie that I don't want to believe in, So at the age of 10, I ran away. I ran away not because I was looking for a better future. I think I ran away because I wanted to die, but die in the hands of a stranger and not give my father an opportunity to bury me because I felt that would give him joy, Wow. So I ran away, never been 20 miles away. And I went 500 kilometers away and became a street kid in Kampala. And that was the only life I knew. Miserable in every way, shape, form you could imagine. Yeah. There's nothing in the United States to compare street life in a third world country. You don't even have stray animals to compare with,
Right.
And that was me for 5 years until I met a stranger who changed my life and put me in school. And I excelled, went to school in Uganda, went to school in England. And that's how I came to the United States, through the kindness of a stranger I was trying to steal from. He didn't see a thief. He didn't see a smelling teenager.
Yeah.
He saw a little boy with potential and said, you know what? I want to know you more, but I want to invest in you as well. And that's what changed my life.
Yeah. How did you survive for 5 years on the street?
So as street kids, we slept in the sewer. Why the sewer? Because the sewer smelled so bad that no other people can go. So for us, it was a safe place to be.
Protection. Yeah.
Yes. We also slept close to where they threw garbage, like in the garbage dump, because most people didn't give us food, but they would throw it in the garbage. So we had to run there before the dogs got there, So that was a life where you survived by stealing. We didn't steal money, but most people didn't make $1, but people used us as cheap labor. So we also found a way. You use me, I'll also find a way to get a meal out of you.
Yeah. I mean, fair. You said us, how many kids roughly? Was there just a couple of you? Were there a lot of you?
Like 3,000 kids on the streets of Kampala.
What?
Yes. But we stay in groups we stay in groups of our age group, so like in my age group, I could have, 20, 10, 12, 13-year-olds because it was safer. The older kids abused us or used us. So we tried to stay within our, our age group. Yeah.
Okay. So it was common. This wasn't just like an idea that you had to just, I'm going to escape my home life and my family life. Like was a reality.
Yes. My reality.
For a lot of people.
Right. And you didn't hope for tomorrow because some of the kids died because they ate something poisonous or they were run over by a car or, something happened. So you saw that. So it wasn't like you hoped one day you get out of it. No, it was, you hoped one day you lose your life and that's it.
Right. That seemed like the only ending. Yeah.
Correct.
Well, at what point did you find faith? Like, you said you had no hope. There was no glimpse of hope when you were on the street. At what point did you find some of that hope?
So once he put him in college, he also brought me in. Once he put him in school, he also brought me into his home. So I got to see a family that loved each other. To me, at first, I felt it was fake. He didn't yell. I thought I always waited for him to beat up his family, but he didn't. I was like, something is weird about this guy. Something is weird. His kindness also just ticked me off because he was so kind that it just made me angry. Like, why are you so kind? Why are you so nice? Because I had never experienced that. Yeah. Also, as a street kid, for everyone who was kind was also abusive. So for us, kindness came with abuse. So I waited for him to, abuse me, but he never came. And that's kind of how I found out that he was a believer. And he invited me to church, and I began to really hear the gospel. But I didn't like the church and I didn't like the gospel. Here's why. My father was Roman Catholic, so he was very, very religious, but at the same time, very abusive. So for me, I associated religion with abuse.
Fair.
That's what I saw my dad. But also too, like I had grown up, I was 19, 18. So for me, I wanted to go back to my father and break his leg. I could do something, mean,
Yeah.
But the Bible just wasn't kind of working for me. So the Bible says, forgive even those who've wronged you. I'm like, oh, no. I'm not going to do that. So because of hatred towards my father, I just didn't become a believer because I didn't want to give away that hatred. Like, I'm not, until I was in Rwanda during the genocide in 1994. I went to rescue children. I was 19 to rescue children. On my first day, I saw more than 4,000 dead bodies. So I knew I was going to die, but the question was, if I die, where will I go? And that's how I became a believer, because I knew my life was over and I didn't want to take the anger with me, and once I said, you know what, I'm going to die, but I'd rather forgive my father. I felt like I lost 40 pounds in an instant.
I bet.
And that's how I became a believer.
Yeah. And then what did you do with that forgiveness? Did your father know?
No, he did not know. Later, I think, at 2022, I just went back and, just told him, I forgive you, and for me, I think it was for myself. Like, I wanted to let it go, even if he had to say, oh no, like, to me, I forgive you, and also I wasn't looking for a father. I think I wanted to forgive, just as forgive anyone who had me on the streets, just like any other man, that I wanted to give it away and say, you know what, I will. Also, I felt like me carrying my anger with me, he was still winning.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I was like, no. I'm not going to let you in some way affect my future by bringing you all the baggage around with me in my heart. And that helped me to let go, knowing that I don't want to still govern my life years later. Yeah,
breaking that chain, that hold is partly what helps us to live in freedom of forgiveness, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Do you still keep in touch with the man who kind of rescued you from the streets?
Yes, most people think he's my biological father because they've been my family. They've traveled to the US to see me. They're the ones I know. Not only did they put me in school, but I became part of their family.
Yeah.
And now I had a place to belong and be, that changed my life.
Yeah, that's so great. And then at what point, Peter, did you have like this moment where you thought, I need to somehow help the world. I need to change the world. I mean, you were, helping in Rwanda and I'm sure doing other things, but did you have this kind of moment where you said, I need to make life better for kids so that they don't have the same kind of life that I had?
Correct. Yes. I adore this man so much so that I wanted to be like him, and his life was about really helping the most vulnerable. So through his lens, I just saw what ticked for him or how he lives his faith, the sacrificing and giving to others is most important. So for me, because I adored him and idolized him.
Yes.
Then for me, that was just more natural for me to see what he did. I was like, wait, if a stranger can see the best in me, I should do the same. And that's really what drew me, that I wanted to make a difference because he showed me what it takes, what it means, the sacrifice that comes with it. And I was the recipient of that. Yeah.
And so then you went into foster care? Is that like just the natural step? You just said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Help us to connect those dots.
Right. So when I arrived in the United States, I really struggled with my faith my first week, and the reason why I struggled was seeing how much food was thrown away, because I had come from a world where people were dying for lack of beans, and seeing how much food was thrown away. And I was like, there's no way I can read the Bible and understand it the way Americans do, But I think in my own self, I feel like God loves Americans than he loves my people. That how can they have so much food, but yet my people die for lack of beans, So before I could, in some way, that was the first start. But then I got to be rebuked. Luke 12:48, how much is given, much is required. That I realized that I was the wealthiest man on the planet, that I had a family that I didn't have. I had hope that I didn't have before. And now I live in the wealthiest country on the planet. Like, I am the most fortunate kid, So then I got to know about foster. And I got to visit people who were wealthy, and I realized, like, wait, how can you be so wealthy and you have 10,000 square footage, but there's a kid in your neighborhood that have no place to stay? Like, how do you reconcile the two?
Yeah.
And I think for me, I didn't want to be a listener of the gospel, but I wanted to be a listener and a doer, that I could not have an extra bedroom and just say, I'm blessed to have a room, but there's a kid in the neighborhood that have nowhere to go. Like, I just couldn't just put those together of being a believer, living my faith every day, but not doing something,
Yeah.
Is what changed my life. But also too, I didn't know they would allow me because I had never seen a single dad who was fostering,
Yeah.
So for me, I went into to mentor teenagers. I said, you know what? If they cannot allow me to foster, but at least I can mentor. So that's when I wanted, and the social work said, hey, what are you here for? I said, I would like to mentor teenagers. She said, have you ever thought of being a foster? I said, yes, I do, but I'm not qualified. She said, why? I said, I'm single. She's like, Peter, 30% of our foster parents are single. You can be, literally. It was on a Monday, and I signed up on a Thursday.
Oh, you did. Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that 30% are single. I think it's great. I think in my own mind, I also thought it was mandated that you have to be two parents or, check all these certain boxes.
Wow, it's amazing when we believe the lie, like we don't. And for me, it was even deeper. I come from Uganda. I had never seen a Black person who was adopting in Uganda. I've traveled all over the world. I had never seen a Black person who was adopting in Ethiopia or anywhere. They were always married and they were always Caucasian. So I thought, you believe the lie. You believe you have to look a certain way to be to be an adoptive dad or a foster parent. And that realizing that was a lie. I mean, yes, I just jumped in because I always wanted to make a difference.
Yeah. So it really was your faith. I mean, your experience,
Correct.
And then your faith of like, hey, I'm going to, it's the whole book of James, right? Like, we're not just going to say the thing, we're going to actually do and live out what we claim to believe.
Right, absolutely. And for me, someone had done that for me. So I had a tangible way of looking back and said, I wasn't a good kid. There was nothing in me that was cool, sexy for him to say, I'm going to have this kid. Zero. I was the opposite. Troublemaker, no boundaries. But yet for him, I will always ask, like, why do you not let me go? Like, why don't you just kick me out? And he says, Peter, you're a gift to me. And you teach me what Christ looks like. I'm like, what do you mean? But it was then that I really understood that, he died. He would say, he died for me to love you. It's just a privilege. I was like, oh.
That is so beautiful. That's so lovely. So now, Peter, you've had 47 kids come through your home.
Mm-hmm.
Will you give people a little bit of a picture of like, what does that look like? You get the call. How long are they with you? What is that? What's required of you? Will you give just a little picture of what that even looks like in the day to day?
Right. So kids come in foster care in so many different ways, and as a foster parent, when a child comes in foster care, they are scrambled, just calling, looking who can take the child. Usually you get a phone call at 3 a.m. or late at night or in the evening. So when I get a phone call, they get to say, hey, there are 2 kids who need a home and we need it for 24 hours. So then I go to my kids and say, hey, I always involve my kids like, I just got a phone call. Here's the need. What do you think? And they'll say, well, let's think about it. So they ask me questions. I say, this is the child, this is where they're coming from. And usually if the kids say yes, then I call the social worker. Usually they give you like 20 minutes, Then I call back and say, hey, I think we can take the child. Usually by the time they say so, they are already on the way coming to you,
Right.
And
hoping usually you would say yes.
Right. For the kids, when we receive them, like, we don't know anything about them. You get to know the child as soon as you open that door. But most of the time, you really don't know. So they ask either for 24 hours or they ask for a weekend or they ask for, hey, for whole summer, or they say permanence. Permanence meaning that this child is going to be in your home for more than a year. If you take this child. So you cannot already, you cannot know. But foster care is so strange and so I cannot describe it on this call. But sometimes the child you think for the weekend are the ones who stay forever. The ones you think they are permanent staying with you are the ones that go back home or go to kinship, a week later or a month later. Yeah.
And reunification really always is the goal of foster care. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Because the kids were brought from home or from, unsafe places, but just so they can find a safe place for them. And that means we want to give an opportunity for mom and dad to get better so the kids can go back. If they can't, we also want to look into kinship. Kinship means a guardian, a friend, a grandpa, an aunt, someone who's close to them that can say, you know what, I'll take in the child. But while we as foster parents are holding the child with us as they search for who where this child's gonna go, and most of them there's no any other place to go.
Yeah, you become their safe space, whether that's for holding ground or however long. Your job effectively is to love them and make sure that they're safe and protected.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is one of the biggest cultural differences maybe that you have to navigate, being African, being from Uganda while raising these like Southern white American children?
Oh my goodness. It's everything, I think for me, the first difficulty was maybe the food, because I grew up where I could never throw the food, and I think watching my kids, can have a bite on an apple and say, I don't like it. I'm like, I don't say they've never been to, in Africa or experienced what I experienced. But in my head, I'm saying, you have no idea.
Yeah.
You just took one spoon and you want to throw the food. And I had to really learn how to really not bring those negative feelings towards my children, but find a way on how to educate them. Like, hey, maybe we can only serve this much, but if we need more, we can come back for more, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. So they don't take those apples and just stick them down in the couch.
Yes. Yes. And the other shocking part for me maybe was, I come from a communal world, where if a neighbor dies, the neighbor will take the kids. Like, that's just how we live our lives. Sure. We have no foster care system. We're just there for one another. I think the shocking part was lack of that in the United States. Like, I can be, even in my church world, like I can be in church and I go and they get to see my kids come and go. But no one ever says, hey, how can we help? I think those were shocking moments for me to say, oh, wow. Or their parents are struggling. Like, I wish someone reached out to them. Like, I wish someone was there for mom and dad to say, you're struggling, but how can we come alongside so you don't lose your kids? Because by the time they come into foster care, it's a little bit too late.
Yeah. How do you navigate when you bring these children in? How do you navigate living out your faith, fully who you are and what you believe, if the child that's been placed with you, maybe their biological family does not share those same beliefs?
So, the foster care, they have a policy where they say, so especially at 13 and below, that they live a life you live. So they're coming to your home. Okay. They gotta take all the values, the principles that you live. So that means going to church is part of what you do. They go to church, and kids love to go to church, make new friends. They never really resist that, but also to how how I really help them navigate their trauma, to use the scripture or to use my faith as a way. God loves us. That's how we need to love one another. Yeah. Hitting someone is just not nice in a way, So I use those principles. For teenagers, if they are 13 and above, I really want them to make that choice. Would you like to come to church? Okay. And the less I push it, the more they will come. Because they're coming from a place where they're always told what to do, where to go. Yeah. And they didn't like that. So for me, usually I say they're old enough to stay home, but also they're old enough to make that choice to say, would you like to come to church? And if you don't want to, it's fine. Absolutely. But I'll still love you as who you are, not who I want you to be.
And I imagine like you, when you were initially welcomed in, there's probably a little resistance there of, if they're not used to having choice, they're probably like, why are you asking me this? Are you about to control or force me? But I would think that they would have initially or ultimately respond better.
Right. Well,
to having that option.
Well, I would say in my experience, most of my kids really don't do well with religion, because if, they have this question of, if God loves me, why would he take my mom away? Why my mom will not come back, Yeah. And some have even gone to church and they have told them, if you pray hard, your mom will come back. I know. And they never came back. And so you're like, oh, yeah, or they use religion to reprehend them.
Yeah.
So in some way that it really damages the child. And usually that's the last place they want to go. They don't want to go there. And unless, as I said, unless they're below 13, they will come. But above 13, no.
Yeah. So you really do, Peter, you do so much more work I mean, I think all foster parents, but talking to you and your experience, you're really doing so much more, which already is enough to bring them in and protect them and care for them. But you're also helping them heal. You are helping them unlearn even a toxic religion, or, I mean, how do you find the stamina? How do you find the soul care for yourself? You're doing a lot of heavy things.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I even have kids who are from Caucasian families, and they're like, I have so much stories I've heard about you, not me as a person, but you as a race, that they try to navigate. And for me, and one thing that this man did for me, he lived faithfully, that he didn't have to tell you the gospel, but you just knew this man loves God and is kind. And I learned that from him. Like, I can tell people every day about faith, but if I don't live it, it still will go the other way. And in my life, I find living it is better in a way, to live that life of letting my life be a testimony of what I believe and being there for my kids. Yes, difficulty when it comes to trauma, but also their parents as well. Sometimes their parents don't like you, but when you pursue them and you show, hey, I want you to have your kids. How can I help? And most times they're like, wow, wait, no one has ever done that to me, and in that way we get to bridge the gap and we get to be friends in a way, because I want them to get better and have their kids. Yes, it is, sometimes they think we are fostering kids, but we're also fostering their families as well. They have to meet them. They have to navigate all the legal and all the foster policies and all that we get to come alongside and say, we know it's tough, but you can do it. You can do it. So yes, I get to do lots of things.
Yes. So you are actually in relationship with their family, the biological families as well, not just the children.
For me, I prefer it that way, that I pursue the parents.
Okay.
Because those, here's why. So as a street kid, I would hear people say, what a mother would let their kids be on the streets. But no one understood my mom. Mama was being abused as much as I was abused. She couldn't protect me. I live in a society where she was a third-class citizen, and there's nothing she could do. And I think even here in the United States, the same way, that your mom, you have 4 kids and you don't have a job and you're struggling day by day. Where do you get the resource? And most of the time that's how they lose their kids, because there's no any other way to. And for me to be judgmental against them, I feel like that's unproductive. But also too, again, because of my faith, I just want to live it and not see them as villains, but see them as God loves them, and I'll be the first one to love them. And I want to be an uncle that when my kids go back to their parents, I still stay in their lives in a way, and always that works perfectly well, but by loving their families, the kids get to see how much you love them, because you love the one person they don't have and want to love.
Yeah. Yeah. That is such a fantastic perspective too, of helping these families to see, and the children to see, hey, maybe society as a whole has biases or judgment or expectations or assumptions even about your family and the situation that you're in, but that doesn't make it true.
Right.
And so I feel like you can break that and let them know, like, hey, just because a majority of people might think this way, it doesn't mean that's true about you or your parents. And you get to see them through the eyes of Jesus, really.
Right.
It's so beautiful.
Yes. Changing the narratives of people is really what changes them. Sometimes I would drive 4-hour drive to go so I can have visitation, and they'll ask me why. I say, because I don't want you to miss out that visitation, and that will take you back to court because you miss that visitation, because I know you don't have driver's license, and you have to struggle to find someone, and in those moments where they'll say, oh man, you're an awesome dad, and even some say, I cannot do, but would you be the one to adopt my children? And for me, that adoption is coming from them. It's being blessed by them. Yes, the state has to process the whole thing, but from the get-go, the parents said, I cannot, but I also believe that you're going to keep me in touch with my children, that I would want you to be their forever dad. And usually, to me, that's what I love, because you're going to make that bridge that gap for the kids, but also for the parents. They get to know you care for them that much.
And the trust is there. What the highest compliment, Peter. I hope this conversation is enlightening as it gives you a new perspective into the foster care system. I also hope it's not the last time that you stop to consider the experiences of other people. So I'm linking up 2 additional podcast episodes in the show notes for any of you who want to understand even more. We're going all the way back to episode 75 with Loveland Palm, who will give you a different perspective on adoption, as well as providing you with language, both things to say and not to say to blended families. Her episode will also provide new things for you to consider when going into a developing country for adoption, travel, or a mission trip. I'm also linking up episode 130 with Dr. Terrence Lester. This conversation will help you grow in compassion and empathy as you unlearn stigmas and assumptions that you likely have about the parents and families who find themselves struggling to care for their children. Because seeing people through the eyes of Jesus is the first necessary step before we can even consider coming alongside them. Well, I have your second book right here. I'm in the middle of reading it, and it is called Love Does Not Conquer All. Tell us about the lesson behind that title.
Well, when I became a foster parent, I said, I'm going to love on my kids and I'm going to do whatever, anything I said, So as soon as I think the first child who came in, he looked in my eyes and called me the B word. It's like, you B word, go get me some water. I was like, oh, okay.
We have some work to do here.
Yes. And it wasn't because they hated me. That's where they came from. And they thought that's what men order for whatever they want to drink. And in those moments, I felt so small, because here I am with all my heart. I'm going to love these child. I realized not so fast.
It takes more than that.
Absolutely. And I realized that there's so much I had to work on myself. Like I had to revisit my own childhood, like to make sure I don't bring how I was parented into my new parenting lifestyle, Like I had to really move from here to be there for my children. It takes so much to learn, so much to to be a foster parent that you can't just love is not enough. That you have to work hard. Think about you have a kid who tells you they hate you, they don't like you every day, and you still have to love them. Are they doing so to hurt you? No, absolutely. But our kids are going through so much, and are wondering, where's my mom? What would I be with a stranger? Like, Christian, if I said, I came to your home, didn't tell you where I'm going, and I dragged you to some county somewhere, and I say, you're going to live there. Yeah. Are you going to be happy? Oh, I love this home. These people. No, you'd be angry. I love my home. It was comfortable the way I know it. Why would you bring it to a stranger?
Yeah.
And in so doing, it's loving someone who doesn't like you and loving someone who does not want your love. And I think that's what I really wanted to help foster parents, because that's how I came in, because I thought, oh, just love, and I realized that I had to do so much for me, in order to truly be the best parents I could be. So that's why I say, love doesn't conquer all. No.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very catchy title, because I saw it and I was like, wait, what? What is another lesson in here that maybe you were surprised to learn, or that was hard for you to learn as a foster parent?
Yes. I think this chapter there, it's called Loving a Child as Who They Are Rather Than Who I Want Them to Be. To me, that was really super cool. So I come from Africa. The only way to success, the only way hope you have is education, because there's no resource. So if you're educated, you can make it, you can survive. So then I have that kind of perspective in life. So coming to the United States, where education is amazing. I have 3 degrees, but then you have kids who that isn't their big deal, Yeah. So think about, so that's where you come from with this expectation. And then you're parenting a kid who not for me.
Don't care.
Whoa, that was really, really difficult for me. And then I realized that, hey, actually, that's projecting my own dreams. That's projecting what worked for me towards my child, And I knew that was wrong, that I needed to love my kids. I have kids who, they're not going to college, but they're amazing kids. They're working so hard. They're good at other things than education. And for me, I would have lost or valued them less because I I had, projected my own standard of what successful is to my children. And that really helped me to love my children, but more to parent your child as who they are rather than who I want them to be. But also that took away the pressure, the feeling I felt, the feeling I'm not meeting the standard. That feeling I think it's a stress that we parents wear for our kids that doesn't need to be. That I knew, hey, I'm going to love my kids. whoever they are, in a way that suits them. And that was the best lesson I can say.
Oh, well, that sounds like a lesson that all people need to learn, not just foster parents, not just parents. I feel like the world would be better off if all of us could say, hey, I'm going to love you for who you are instead of who I want you to be. That would revolutionize the world.
Absolutely. Marriage too, everything. I think sometimes we get to meet, you get a partner and you love them as who they are, but then you marry them, you're like, but can you change this person be? but you feel like, wait, this person was this way. And I think when we love them as who they are, we get to love them in I don't know, the expectations go away, that projection of what we think it should be goes away. And then we get to love them just as who they are.
Who they are. Yeah. Peter, what's something that people tend to maybe oversimplify when it comes to the foster system?
Simplify. I would say adoption,
Okay.
I think most people, they've seen us as foster parents also adapt, and sometimes they're like, yeah, I want to be a foster parent so I can adapt. And you're like, it doesn't work that way. I adopted my 11th child, Anthony. He was my 11th child. And then I adopted my 30, 31, and 32 number, So that means the others had to go back home. So if my whole goal was to adapt, think about how that would have been difficult for me to even make it to 10,
Right. Yeah. It could be heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak.
Yeah. So sometimes I think people confuse the foster care as an adoption agency rather than adoption is the last resort,
Okay.
And sometimes takes years to get there. Or sometimes you even wait for 4 years and the last minute they're like, not so. An uncle is coming and they take the child. And so that's the one thing they simplify, I'm going to be a foster parent so I can adopt kids. And it's not always that way.
Yeah. Yeah. We've walked with friends of ours who multiple times they went through, had the child only knew them really as their family because they took the child, and they were placed as infants. And then it was like, in the 11th hour of about to assign the adoption papers that the child was reunified. And I know that that's the goal and they know that that's the goal, but it was hard walking with them, as their church family. It felt like a loss, I know, at that point.
Absolutely. And that's a good thing because attachment is what makes us better parents. Okay. Yes, we're willing to love that much, but we get attached. And humanly speaking, it's what our kids need in so many ways. But it leaves you shattered in pieces, and if the goal was only adoption, I think you won't go through 2 children. You won't go through, you'll be like,
right.
No, I can't.
Yeah. It's what makes them fantastic foster parents, actually. So I'm glad that you said that. How can the church, like the church as a whole, be more proactive in supporting vulnerable children and families instead of waiting to react, after the crisis hits, after they've already had to be removed from the home?
Oh, gosh. Don't get me started.
Yeah, come on, let's go.
Oh, church,
Give me some practicals.
I live in Mecklenburg County. There's about 900 kids in foster care, but there's 1,300 churches in the same county. Sometimes you're like, man, I wish one church can do something. And I know the church is not a farm. Like I know, a church is just a place we meet and get to share the gospel and unite each other and fellowship. It's not a home where they cook and sleep, But for me, I wish the church, especially when it comes to moms, like I wish we remove the stigma of if it's difficult, it's the church to go to. Like you go to church, but I think we made it so a cool place we go, we dress well, we fellowship, we tell about what God is doing, and then we walk out. But the mom will struggle on the other side. They're afraid to come to us to say, I'm struggling. What should I do? And I think if the church could make a few steps backward and say, how do we make someone who's struggling to really, we be the first place to come and say, where should I go? How should I do? And in that way, we really, really get to, once the child comes into foster care, it's really hard to get them out of the foster care.
Yeah.
And the moms too. So I wish there was a way that we, especially moms, can see someone struggle and say, how can we help? How can we not judge you? But how can we help? And I think judging and that has caused sometimes mom to say, I'm going to hide my problems and I'm not going to let anyone know. And in so doing, by the time we recover or we discover it, it's a little too late, Yeah. The other part is, I think the church, if we can come alongside, like if we can be the wraparound families, we don't have to be foster parent, but if we can find one family that we can inspire, we can come alongside, I think that will also recreate more families to foster, because they get to see the example of what the church is doing, and they're like, with that support, I think I can do it, with that, my church coming alongside, I think I have a village that would help me. And I think that's where we foster parents fail or we burn out because we don't have people come alongside and really help. But if a church can, just one, not two, not three, just one family, and also too, it really heals and brings alongside that family that lost the child. When they see the church really step up, there's a way they really begin to believe that God, you put me in this place. I believe you'll heal me. I believe whatever I'm going through, I'll overcome it because I can see the church being a church to my children on the other side. Yeah.
For somebody that's listening, that's like, well, of course, yes, I would be supportive, but I don't know any families like this. I don't know any, parents who are struggling, or I don't know any families whose children have been placed in foster care. What would be your response to that?
So usually, unless it's critical, unless there's an accident and the parents died and the kids have to find a home, or severe abuse, those we get to know right away and they come. But sometimes we get to see the signs of, parents struggling, sleeping in the car, moving from one place to the other, kids missing school. So those are a few signs that we can see among our friends that we say, okay, how can I help? The other part is, I think when you're willing to help, you're going to find a way, for example, like I wish the church could say, I want to give more to the church so the church can find ways on how we can help those we cannot reach, in a way, they're giving you resources as a local church to find ways on how to plug it in families that need it, because for us it's who it's who's been thinking about foster care. The more we can talk about it and the more we say, hey, by the way, we have resource, the more they come and say, yeah, I've been wanting that,
Yeah.
The other part is simplifying the needs. So for example, I'll give you an example. For me, I have a family I've never met. They give me a pizza every Thursday. They're in California, but they make sure year round. Why? Because for me, on Thursday is visitation day. And that's the most difficult for my children. When the parents don't show up, the emotions are high. When the parents come and then the visit is done, emotions are high, And for me as a foster parent to go back home and make a meal, sometimes it's like, oh gosh, But then having someone really bring you a pizza, that's all you need. That really takes away so much. The other part is a coffee. Knowing a foster parent or a foster dad and say, I just want to have a coffee with you. And I want to make it a point every month I will have a coffee with you, not to do anything, not to tell me anything about your children, but just to make sure you're seen, heard, and known. That's all, And I think it's those little impacts that will truly change the lives of our children and our families to want to do more. If we can find practical ways on how they can truly help, not just on Christmas,
Yes.
I think Christmas, that's what everyone thinks about,
Yes.
because on Christmas, I can't take all the bags,
Right.
You
can only take so many gifts.
Absolutely. But also, here's someone, my kids will always have everything they need. But for me as a foster parent, I'm the one most time forgotten. Does that make sense? No.
Yes.
And I'm the one who's doing the hard job.
Yeah.
So then if everyone wants to give my kids a backpack, that's cool. But how many can I take? But if they think of me as a parent who's about to burn out and struggling, that makes the world to me, If you're there and say, I love playing video games. Peter, you have teenagers. Can we bring them to play video games? Absolutely. Because you become the best mentor to the world my kids know, I have 2 daughters. If you can say, Peter, I want to take your daughters for a nail day. Just me. Oh, of course. I'm so there. What are you doing? Well, you're coming alongside me, but also you're inspiring my child to see the kindness of another stranger. Be there for my kids. Yeah. You see how we, we don't have to sell our homes. We don't have to give money. It's just little things that really impact the children. To say, Peter, I know you probably need to go do errands, but I can do them for you. Just give me the list.
Yeah.
And I'll get them for you. Or to say, I'll take your kids. We go to the park while you go get a coffee. There's so many little things.
You can breathe for a minute. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like I'm looking for someone right now. Like someone says, I love doing laundry. Peter, once a month, I'll come to you. I'll be like, how much money can I pay you?
Let us know, guys. If you love doing laundry, I'll connect you to Peter. That could be a great blessing.
Please. Yes.
And I really love the point too, that you said, to think of the foster parent. Because I don't. I mean, besides the family that we know, but even then they would bring in, a baby. And if I have 2 older daughters, so if they brought in a girl, I was like, I've got baby toys and I've got baby clothes and I always only ever thought of the child.
Exactly. That's what
I don't think I ever thought of them.
Absolutely. So for me, so when I began being a foster parent, the 3rd month, I was like, I can't do this. I'm quitting. And when I shared with my care group on Wednesday, I said, this thing is just, And they sat with me, they say, hey, how can we help? And I gave them the list of things I want, and they did it for me. So 9 years later, I could have given up my first 3, but because they came alongside, that 40-something kids have been blessed because of the kindness of the people who did that for me. Does that make sense? So in a way, the reason why we have so many kids in foster care is because we lose so many foster parents. So think about if you can support, and that's why I said it's easier for the church to support a family, because you're taking care of the adults. Yeah. And in that way, they stay longer helping kids in foster care. In that way, they don't burn out. So in a way, you're helping more kids have a home and a safe place to be.
Yeah, that's so great. What would you say to someone who feels maybe too broken or unqualified to make a difference in someone else's life?
That's me. Broken.
Hello.
Broken, helpless. I mean, think of people the abuse that I had to endure, that place that I had to see, in a way, to me has helped me have empathy, because I know, when my kids hoard a food, I'm not like, oh my gosh, my food is going to smell. Well, I was the best thief, I can tell you,
Yeah.
But for me to be in those places and to say, my kid isn't stealing, my kid is worried in his head, the food will not be there anymore. So for me to say, that's how I reacted, and have empathy to this little one, So the fears, I think sometimes we're afraid of, because we had a hard childhood, or didn't have a good dad, that we will be those people. We are not. God didn't make me my dad. No, he made me Peter, and he's helped me overcome that. Somehow, when I go back to what my life was, it helps me to have empathy, because I get to see what my kids are going through. So if you're out there wondering, I didn't have a good childhood, I don't think I would be a good dad, I promise you, actually, you'll be able to have empathy, because you know it better than most people do. Yeah. You know what it means to not be checked on, to feel unwanted, to feel unloved. You know what it means every day feeling, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
That you'll be able to show that to a child that needs it.
To relate to the stigma and help break that cycle.
Absolutely.
Well, Peter, you've given us lots of practicals already, which I so appreciate. But the last question I have for you is the same question that I ask everybody. So because the podcast is called Becoming Church, we don't believe that we just go to a church building on Sunday, but we are called to be the church in our lives. How can people listening become the church to kids and families in the foster care system?
Right. So this man who took me in became the church to me. When, I didn't believe, I think the idea of God the Father for me, just because I had so bad a dad, and every male I met was so bad. The idea of God the Father was, wait, what? But he showed it to me, because now I believe if this man can be this example and be good, then my God, the Father is sharing is true, So I had something to relate to in order to believe. And I think, we can share the gospel every day. We can hear the gospel. I think we get to practice that to the people sometimes that are different from us, or that are in a different economic status than ours, or in a place that's struggling, that we get to practice really what God has shared us. And I think that's the best way to be a church. When we hear, we love football. We love watching the game, but we get to see the practice they did all week, all month, displayed in that. And I think the same way as Christians, we get to hear the gospel. We get to read it every day, and that's practice. But now we have to truly act on it to see how God will use us in ways that we never thought. But it has to come from in our brain to a human being, to another human being. In a way, is it your family that you've been struggling, but you want to forgive them? Is it your coworker that sometimes nags you, but this time you say, you know what? No, I'm not going to let that really hinder the relationship that I want to have with this person. Is it your spouse that sometimes, that you say, God, you brought this man in my life, or this wife in my life, and I'm going to just do what you want me to do, not what I would like to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. That'll preach. Peter, thank you so much for being here. I really know that this conversation is going to help people just to consider foster care and the foster system differently, maybe more than just at Christmas, hopefully.
Yes.
I just thank you so much for being here. We'll link up your books and some other resources in the show notes for people to listen to and check out as well.
Thank you. I truly appreciate it.
You can make a difference in someone's life today. It doesn't take an excess of time, money, or resources, just a willingness to create a little margin, reach out, and provide some care. I'm praying that God makes it clear who that person is for you, and that you'll have the courage to follow through as Holy Spirit leads. As always, if this episode blessed you in any way, I would love for you to share it on social media and write a review letting people know why you listen. Your word of mouth helps people who need this encouragement find it more than any of my own social media promotion can do. And I'm incredibly grateful when you take the time to review and comment. Until next time, thanks so much for listening, and keep becoming the church to the people around you.